Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Catholic Truth Podcast. My name is Bryan Mercier, president of Catholic Truth, and we want to help you to know your faith, love your faith, live your faith, and be able to defend it. And to do that, we often read books. I have read countless books. This is just one side of my library, and we have theology, philosophy, bioethics, you name it. But sometimes you don't want to read all that, and you just want to read a nice Catholic fiction book. Back in the day, I read Pierced by a Sword and that whole trilogy, which was pretty good. And but then after that, I'm like, there doesn't seem to be a lot of Catholic literature out there that like good Catholic books. And so then I came across a book recently called The Father's Son by Jim Sano, who we have here as a guest. And this is a Catholic fiction book, but like Pierced by a Sword, like many Catholic fiction books, they're based on reality, they're based on truth, and they're based on real life experiences. And this is actually one of the best books I've ever read for Catholic fiction. It's actually really, really good. And as you can see, it's well worn and well used on my part. I don't even have time to read, but I happened when Jim sent me the book, I told him I didn't have time to read it, but I'll think about it. And then my wife and I went to vacation in Costa Rica, and suddenly I had some time, so I was reading it every night, and it's excellent. Excellent, well written, such a good concept, such good characters, really in depth, good apologetics, good spirituality, good introspection of who people are as people to make you think, who are you? What am I living for? Why am I here? What's important? And really, everything you would want in a book, I have found in this book. It's a fantastic book. In fact, Jim is Campbell is an author, and he's part of the Writers Guild. He's written 8 books. Like his 8th book is coming out, and it's endorsed by many dioceses. And so he has a lot of big people behind him. He has a lot of support, and I highly recommend this book. But I kind of want to welcome Jim to the show to talk a little bit more about it, because people are always asking me what are some good Catholic books that I can read for my family, that I can recommend for my children or whatnot. So anyway, Jim, welcome to the show.
How you doing, Brian? Been looking forward to talking to you.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. I love your book. I love it. And it's really well written. It's not cheesy. It's not just a lot of times you get stuff even with Catholics or even non-Catholics. I mean, someone asked me to give a talk on 50 Shades of Grey, so naturally I had to read the book first. It was horribly written. I'm not just talking about the content. I'm talking like it was written by a 7th grader. You know, like my background is English and theater, so I majored in English. And when I read, I was like, how does anybody read this? It's just terrible literature. This was really well written, I felt like, and I felt like you intertwined the faith without being pushy. I think you kind of introduced it slowly but surely, and I think this could reach a lot of different audiences. But I'd love to know your thoughts about the book, why you wrote it, who it's for, and kind of what it's about, without spoiling things.
Okay. So I grew up, Irish Italian family, Catholic from the start, but it really clicked when I kind of pushed to look into some parts of the faith. A lot of people talk about the Catholic faith as being, a bunch of old men who have never lived making up these man-made rules. And so I kind of looked into, like contraception, things like that. Every time I checked the subject, I found an unbelievable depth and beauty of truth in it, behind it, that I had never heard of before. And it just convinced me that this church is not man-made. It is something that Christ left us as a gift to know the truth, the Catholic truth, as you share with a lot of passion, and I ran into you um, on social media and listen to you. I love the way you explain things to people in a way with a lot of belief that, hey, this guy really believes this. So, I started listening to Catholic Answers Live and Patrick Madrid show and started reading books, and you start to learn more and more about the faith that, you would not have been aware of unless you kind of dug into it. At the same time, I'm watching so many people drift away, especially the younger generation, drifting away before they ever even knew what the faith was. So I've got people in my family that will say things about the church that, a lot of it's myths or misunderstandings and things like that. And sometimes it's hard to engage in a conversation on it unless they're ready to be part of that. So
For
I had this
sure.
idea about, Jesus taught truth and wisdom through what? He taught through very intriguing stories and very relatable characters. He drew people in to listen to that story, and they could receive that truth he's trying to get them in a certain way. So this story, The Father's Son, is a journey of someone that had a trauma when he was young, and it kind of affected his priorities and relationships in life. And then he runs into this unexpected friendship that takes him on this journey to truth. And I wanted to weave into it the faith in a way that you could see the fullness of the faith, but have it part of a very relatable story. And I was told by many people, you can't do these two things together. And I just felt like if it was done in a way through a character that someone you like, someone you trusted, someone you listened to, that there was a way to do this. Because I've run into people that said, look, I don't have time to go investigate and research all this stuff. Can you give it to me in one place where it's relatable, easy to understand, and maybe addresses some of the things that I thought were true but aren't, and that there's something here? And so that's what kind of drove me. And I spent about 15 years really researching it because I wanted to make sure all the faith content was right on. I started going to Franciscan University. Um, I went to St. John's Seminary for catechetics courses and just doing lots of research. And then when it came down to writing, I said, okay, this is going to be the painful part. I've just heard about how difficult, just writing that story is. And I sat down and the Holy Spirit I just felt like took over and made it the most fun thing I've done in probably my whole life. It just flowed. The story was fun to write, and
And I've
it's
noticed that too, that it did just flow. Like the story flows and it's not awkward. And, a lot of people either have too much religion, it's just forced down your throat, or they don't have, they try to get rid of it altogether. But I feel like you just kind of started out with a good story, kind of like the Da Vinci Code or something. And then, religion slowly and slowly got weaved into it more and more and more until you're having a whole apologetics conversations that are naturally weaved into the story where you're learning about your faith, you're learning to understand it, explain it, and defend it, all while just reading a fiction novel. And, I feel like it has all the components you would need, while simultaneously dealing with a lot of the issues and struggles and anxieties that we all have in life and don't always know how to deal with. You kind of just
yeah.
pack it all into like one book.
Yeah, I liked your book that it was a conversation, right? It was between two people, and it was a very respectful Christian kind of conversation about some of those different issues. And I know when I was younger, I was kind of hot-headed when anything came up about abortion or just some misconceptions of the faith. And then you started listening to some people like yourself, you you have a way to say, okay, I just heard something that could make me upset, but you start looking at it as an opportunity to engage, right? They brought something up, and now you have an opportunity to maybe have a conversation. And that's how one of the things in the book, I think, is that the two main characters end up in that place where that trust is built up in the friendship to be able to ask the question and listen differently about things that the main character really thought he hated the church, right? Because he thought all these different things. And it's like unveiling what Christ left us and seeing the beauty of it. So,
Yeah, it's like a lot of what you hear or maybe heard at Thanksgiving or we'll hear at Christmas or what you hear at family parties, just people who have left the church, people who have questions about the church, kids who aren't interested in the church. And we just hear these objections and these misconceptions about the church. And we don't always know what to say or how to engage. But I feel like this would give people a way to be able to do that, an understanding of how to do that. Or Christmas is coming up. We could just give them the book for Christmas. Maybe people in your families who like to read, who are looking for good Catholic books. Maybe you have teenagers, young adults who you want to give them good information and, solid info that you can trust. We give them this book. I mean, if you want someone who wants a Catholic book, you can definitely do that. And in fact, I mean, I know we're not really talking about it right now, but can you see this, Jim, on the screen right here? But because Jim has a bunch of books. He has Fallen Graces, Self-Portrait, Stolen Blessings, like a lot of books that you could sell. This one's definitely more for teens, the cartoony aspect of it, which I love. But he has a lot of different books on a lot of different topics. So, but this one was definitely highly engaged in apologetics and answering people's misconceptions about the faith, especially the main character. And you definitely feel and grow attached to the characters. Like I found myself like caring about the characters, and
Yeah.
when they had struggles, you're like, oh no.
Yeah. A lot of people could relate. You talk about the different audiences that might be interested. Certainly, if you still hear me because I just saw unstable come up. You've got people in your family that you can never seem to engage in that conversation with. It just won't go anywhere. And sometimes you can hand them a story that kind of brings them in to the story, and then they start seeing stuff. So it's not like you handed them a nonfiction book and say, "Here, go learn the Catholic faith," right? It's how does it relate to real life, right? In a way that it's part of relationship. Um, Fiction's mostly read by women, 85% of it. So 15% of men read novels and things like that. But when I put this book out and we had book discussion groups and adult faith groups at parishes, I started seeing this 50-50 split, and lots of men who've never read novels said, well, I don't read them because I want to learn something when I read, right? I tend to like nonfiction, but the book gives you, I think, a lot of great information along the
It's
way
like a
that,
good blend of both fiction and
yeah.
nonfiction.
And a priest out in St. Louis, he is an announcer for the basketball team at Augusta Tolton's high school, and he just said, "I love this book. It's got everything, and it's got the faith, it's got the mafia, it's got basketball." So I've had just a wonderful experience meeting people all around the world that have read it, and I give all the credit to the Holy Spirit. Like I said, I kind of type and let them lead, and it's been quite a journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. Who would you say is the audience for this book? Is it for, just adults? Obviously you said it's for men and women, but is it for like teens? Is it for kids? Like how young would we go for this book?
I'd say the father's son would be, mature high school and up. Um, you could be young. I've had people that are 15 read it, but I think it's more for, say, 17 and up, people that either are very interested in their faith to people that are atheists. I have a great friend at work, and we'd go out for beers afterwards. And if God came up, he'd be like, I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear anything. So I would respect that. For years, we never really got into that conversation. He read the book and it allowed him to do it in a non-threatening atmosphere. It allowed him to see something, and he's become one of the biggest promoters of the book. Every time we go out somewhere, he's selling the book. So
Oh, wow.
it gives an opportunity to read something without any feeling like there's an agenda here, right? Or someone's pushing something on me, and I'm reading it. I can start
Exactly.
anytime I want. So it can go a pretty wide range of people, whether I've had Protestant ministers read it and give me some great feedback on it. Um, but a lot of it's been people, Catholics that really loved their faith and learned stuff. My brother has read it 5 times, and he said, I never heard some of this stuff. And he went to
Wow.
Catholic schools all the way through. He said, but nobody told me this about marriage or, some of the different things in there. So it's great to hear that feedback, but they've been able to give the book as a gift to friends that have drifted away, and it may present an
Exactly.
opportunity,
I would
right?
highly recommend giving this book to people who have drifted away. Have you seen the show Last Man Standing? It's a sitcom with Tim Allen.
Yes.
And Tim
Yep.
Allen's a real, like, huge conservative in real life.
Right.
And so he wrote the show and it's very conservative. However, he also wrote it to, like, it's kind of like a fight between liberals and conservatives. So well, I think the show had such raging popularity because both sides could relate to both sides. Like, if you were liberal, you hung on the liberal side, you agreed with it. You're like, yeah. If you were a conservative, you like hung on the other side, but you were always, and I feel like this book can relate to believers, but if you're an unbeliever, you're going to relate to all or if you're just someone who has questions, you're going to really resonate with the lead character who has a lot of questions, and more than just
And
questions, he has a lot of misconceptions and a lot of anger toward the church. And there's a lot of people who have that. And I think people can relate to that and say, yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That guy knows what he's talking about. And as this guy goes on his journey and it starts to open up his mind a little, it's consequently and simultaneously starts to open up their minds as well. So, I would even give this to people who, like to read, who, have been away from the faith.
I think the other audience I think that is in there is besides those that have drifted away, there's besides the faith aspect of the story, the psychological piece, a lot of people struggle to realize the full intent of what God intended for us, the life we want to lead. So, we've had either traumas or different things or addictions and things that have not allowed us to live fully. And, I have a big interest in psychology. One of the characters is a psychologist as well. And so that kind of the Christian faith is to bring us, I think, to what God intended us to live life fully. And I think good psychology is getting over some of those roadblocks in our lives, so that we can have relationships that are full, that we can have a sense of ourselves that is, not burdened by some of those things. So the journey this main character takes, is really a psychological one, and the faith piece is part of it. They both go together, I think, in terms of leading to where we're intended to be, and the wholeness. I think the ability to have loving relationships and be close to God and to the people around us.
Very well said. And I think that's a really excellent point that people who are struggling in their marriage, people who are struggling in life, people who have anxiety, I mean, this has real world like science and psychology and faith components all packed into it, which are going to help people at all levels, and really it's I can't say enough about it. It's just that's what I said at the beginning of the book. It literally has everything stuffed in a book, but it's interesting and it's fun to read. And I don't know anybody personally. You've read, thousands of people who have read it, but I'm the only one I know who's read it so far. But I can personally speak to it, and I personally would highly recommend it. Do you have anything else that you would like to add that people would know in addition to where they can find it?
Yeah, so the easiest place is probably on Amazon. You can order it through any bookstore, Barnes and Noble, or if you go to your bookstore, they can order it for you. But Amazon tends to be the easiest these days to get them and the quickest way to get it. So I have a website, www.jimsano.com, and happy to answer any questions for anyone has on the books. There's more information on the books on the website as well. You asked about the audience. The second book in this was Gus Busby. It's part of the Father Tom series, and that one can go really into high school as well as adults as a story. And the last one you showed that there was a middle school reader one that was a kid's fantasy book
Oh,
that
I'll show it again.
was a great journey. So that one was fun to
This
write.
one's
The
middle
rest of them
school.
I think are more for high school and up,
Okay, so
more adults. Yeah,
so
that
this
one.
is okay. So this is the middle school one.
Yeah.
Great. And this is high school and up, high school and up.
Yeah, I've had a number of high schools looking at Gus Busby. It's a great story about a young black teen that is, kind of between the gangs and the opportunity to move out of them, and an old curmudgeon guy that's in the neighborhood that is this. They didn't get along together well at all in the beginning, right? And they forged this friendship, and it was a fun story.
That's great. We need more good Catholic literature. So I'm really glad there's an author out there who's pounding away in the streets, so to speak, writing and writing and writing. I write a lot too, but I'm not a good writer. I'm a terrible writer. I'm a good speaker, not a good writer. So when people look at my manuscripts, they're like, oh my gosh, they're a mess. Um, you know, In fact, my New Age book called Counterfeit Spirituality originally got rejected by Catholic Answers because they were so excited about it. But then when they read it, they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is literally an encyclopedia. It's boring. All the information's great. It's just boring." So I had to go back and re take a year to rewrite the whole thing, and then our Sunday Visitor polished it up and published it. But yeah, so you are actually a good writer. So thank you for using your gifts and talents for God. And people, I'll put all of his website and the Amazon link below where you can find it for yourself and or others, your children, your family members, people who have fallen away, people at work who have questions on the faith. Buy for them. Say, hey, I've read this. Let's talk about it when you're done. There's a lot of different ways we can evangelize in
Yes.
subtle ways without
Right.
being preachy and pushy. So thank you, Jim. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing this. And I appreciate you coming on the show.
And thank you for all that you do. I mean, you're inspiring, I think, in terms of your ministry, and it really helps, me think of things that might, affect other people and stories that I may write. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And speaking of my first book, The Conversations with Atheists, I'm almost done with my second book, well, the follow-up book, which is Conversations with Protestants. They're like real conversations that I've had with people of other religions on all different subjects. So you get to hear both sides and how to successfully
I've been
answer
having
them and engage them. Yeah.
I've been having a lot of those on Twitter with a lot of Protestants that are missing. You want them to see what a lot of people have made that journey. A lot of Protestant ministers that step back and check the primary sources, the church fathers, and what did the
Yeah.
real church begin? They were so surprised with it. You hope that you can maybe break through a little bit, or at least correct some of the misconceptions out
hmm
there. But yeah, I think we're all in this together, trying to reach people through different avenues.
And that's it. I do media, I do in-person retreats, that sort of thing, apologetic seminars. Other people do it through street evangelization. People like
Right.
yourself do it through literature, which is super important. So all together, we're doing the new evangelization. So again, thanks
Absolutely.
for coming on, Jim. I really appreciate
I'm
it.
honored. All right. Thank you, Brian.
And thank you all for watching. Make sure to see the show notes below. Check it out. Go buy one now. Go. And make sure to follow us on social media if you haven't. And please, if you can, it's December, support our ministry. People love to give big donations at the end of the year just for tax purposes. Why wouldn't you give it to the best work on the face of the earth? And that's the work of God, saving souls, changing lives. I mean, you could give it anywhere, but why not to God's work to save countless souls in over 130 countries, to defend the faith and to catechize the masses like we desperately need. So see all that below in our description section. Of course, if you have any questions, email us at info@catholictruth.org. God bless you.